Thanks, Yanir, and thank you everyone who are joining us today. I think the Clean Air Expo is something that we should have had more than 3 years ago. We're approaching almost 4 years into this pandemic, and still to this day, most governments are not talking about a clean air revolution. We've talked about vaccines, we've talked about testing, we've talked about masking, and for the most part, there's always controversies around do we still need to shut down? No. Do we still need a mask? Yes. Then others will say no. Do we need to get vaccinated? Yes. But if we're vaccinated, why do we need to get boosted? Because of variants. Do we still need to get boosted? Yes. And then, of course, there's all the anti-vaxxer rhetoric. Similarly, each of these require these personal behavioral modifications, from sticking a swab up your nose to getting a jab, to putting a mask on. And one thing we've learned from the pandemic is many of these things are incredibly, incredibly frustrating and controversial and politicized. But what if we step away from that? What if we, instead of focusing on all these things that can deal with the virus afterwards, and I put vaccines now as dealing with the virus, because right now the vaccines currently don't prevent as much as they prevent the hospitalizations. But all of these are, in many ways, not prevention. Prevention is not getting infected in the first place. What we're doing now, for the most part, is how do we not get sick? And of course, Paxlovid is not widely available and doubling in price. Vaccines are no longer freely accessible unless you have insurance and go through all the insurance hooplas. And all of these things, we're many ways taking the approach of, oh, let's just fix up the car after the car crash. How about we prevent the car crash in the first place? How about we prevent the infection and the subsequent long COVID we're seeing in about the 15, 20%, et cetera? How do we deal with that in reverse? And I think in many ways, when the forest fires, the wildfires were burning this summer, people realized, oh, clean air is actually a thing, that it's not just outside, it's actually permeating into their home. How do we deal with that? And the greatest rush of people buying HEPA filters was actually during forest fires. But why not for COVID? Why not for the next pandemic? And in many ways, that is why we're here. How do we move beyond this politicized discussion of prevention? How do we actually focus on getting those prevention things there in the first place, so that we won't even know that there was an outbreak of something, because we would have prevented it and obviated the need to deal with it, or at least a widespread outbreak of it for the long term. And I think this long-term thinking is what we're sorely lacking. The Biden administration actually passed in the last pandemic relief bill, actually provided a lot of money for clean air in schools. But many school districts didn't use it because the money could have been used for many other utility instead of the technology that we have that we can prevent these infections in schools. And we know that even though risks to children are much lower, it's not zero. And children are super spreaders to families, and that's been shown in studies again and again. So how do we get off this hamster wheel cycle that we're on? And that is why I'm really glad and really pleased that we have so many experts here to talk about HEPA filtration, far UV, upper room UV, and many other more advanced technologies of how do we prevent the thing in the first place, instead of always triaging and fixing the car wreck afterwards. And how do we do it in a way that we don't have these massive social upheavals in our everyday lives? And I think that is where the future is going. That is where the next level of pandemic prevention needs to go. So thank you, everyone. I'm very pleased that we have so many great speakers on these topics. And think of Q&A. We will have Q&A at the end of this event. So, and with that, I will let the next speaker start and hope that we have a really great, fruitful discussion. Thank you so much.